Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the PK's podcast. Glad you all are tuning in. Glad you're all here. Hopefully you've been watching the tailgates and all of those kind of things that I've been putting out there and all of that. But today, just want to talk to you a little bit about family before platform. I just want to clear up a few things today. Some things happened in the last 3-4 weeks and everything that caused me to step down from my position at the church that I was at. And really the whole reason why I stepped down from my position was really to minister to my kids and really to be able to be there for them. Some people didn't agree with some people didn't agree with me letting my daughter and her boyfriend live at our house. And they wanted me to tell them they needed to leave. And then I could hold on to my position at the church. And, not only it wasn't that I could hold on to my position, it was more or less that I could continue to do the things that I was doing that didn't have anything to do with the spiritual side of stuff. So I couldn't be on the platform, I couldn't preach, I couldn't do the things that God has called me to do, but I could do the things that I was doing. I was doing some things with the architect and some other activities that, construction projects that we were doing, selling a double wide and other things of that nature. And there was so much other stuff that I was doing as well that it was things that, that I did, that I could do, that I was able to do. I didn't like doing them. It was stepping out of my comfort zone and doing those things. I tried to do the best that I could when I did them. But I know that, God has called me to be a leader, has called me to preach, has called me to teach and to, sow guidance and things like that into people's lives and to help people come to know who Christ is, to really disciple people and of that nature. And when I was told that, I needed to do that, I needed to just tell them that they couldn't live in my house anymore. There's a whole backstory to everything that has happened with my daughter, my youngest daughter. And I'm not going to go into a lot of it, but, she, in the season of her life, there were times when she was insecure. She didn't know what she wanted to do. There was, part of her felt rejection and all of those things. And, there was, she spent some time at the mental health hospital for a week by herself in Phoenix. And, there were things that she was dealing with and all of that stuff. And she had already pretty much moved over to her boyfriend's house and was already, engaging in fornication and all of that stuff. And, we knew about it. We knew it was happening. We know it's sin. We know that, and they were asked, to move out of her boyfriend's house because they had a 2-bedroom house over there. Her brother was moving in and was going to live there. They were already sleeping on the couch and everything. And so in mine and Tracy's mind, we were going to protect our daughter. And, we allowed both of them to move back, move into our house. And, I didn't think anything of it. Yes, I know it's sin. There's probably people out there rolling around going, wait, you can't do that. Well, hear me out, Jesus ate with sinners. Jesus ate with the tax collectors, the prostitutes, stayed at their houses, did all kinds of things, that we probably would not agree with in this world, this day and age. And, yes, I know that I can't save them. Yes, I know that they are sinning and that they are, going to hell. But you know what? They're my family, and at least I can give them a chance. And at least I can talk to them. And at least I can have them in a place where, they are at that, that I have that opportunity to talk to them. Before, she's living at her boyfriend's. I didn't have that ability, And so when all this came about, it really kind of took me aback, because I was like, wait a minute, I'm being lumped in with somebody else's sin, and yet, I haven't sinned. and that's what was crazy about the whole thing. I was kind of like, well, what do I do? And there's people that are saying that I had made an emotional decision. It was just emotions. It was this, and no, it wasn't. It was through a lot of prayer. A lot of crying, a lot of prayer. Because I loved the church that I was at. The church is awesome. The people are awesome. The things that they're doing is awesome. But there was just this one thing. And I was like, well, my mom and dad offered to allow them to come and live in their house. And I was like, well, that doesn't solve the problem. That just gets them out of my house so it doesn't look bad, And, I counseled with a lot of people, a lot of different people from around the country, different denominations, different pastors, different things, and I prayed about it. Me and Tracy prayed about it, and it was like, no, we've got to do this, and so we did, and hence, I wound up stepping down, and it really, I don't know. It bothered me because it was more or less, I felt like the Pharisees were saying, you need to like they were doing to the prostitute or the lady that was caught in adultery. It was like, we're going to stone you. We're going to do this, And it was almost like I felt like, wait a minute, I've got to take a stand here, What would Jesus have done? Well, Jesus wrote in the sand and then he said, whoever has no sin, go ahead and cast the first stone. And there's been a lot of stones that's been casted, and I keep saying, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to bring anything up, but, if you're listening to this, and this has affected your life in any way or whatever, call me, get my phone number from my mom or dad, it's on my Facebook page, call me or just tell me, hey, let's meet up and let's talk, But the whole thing is that, this whole podcast today is family before the platform, It's family before the platform. Yeah, I could have submitted to my pastor. I could have said, okay, I'll kick them out. I will, do this, I'll do that. But I couldn't in good conscience do that. And I don't believe Jesus would have wanted me to do that either. And so I gave up my position. I gave it up. That's all it is position. But you know what? My ministry and my family comes before the platform. If you ever ask yourself, what good is it to win in ministry if I lose at home? Am I perfect? No, I'm not perfect. Has these last few weeks been tough? Yes, they have. Is my family perfect? No. Have I gotten in arguments with my kids? Yes. Have I still, done a few things that I regret with my kids over the last couple of weeks? Yes. But you know what? We're all in a learning process. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. We can strive for perfection, but we're not. You know, we hear it all the time that we're supposed to put God first, then family, then ministry. But too often in practice, ministry ends up first, and everything else, fights for whatever's left over. And that's not right. We are supposed to be. Before we do for God, we're supposed to be with God. And so many times we're not. We just do and keep doing instead of just being with God and stopping and listening and listening to what he has to say to us. Not what somebody else has to say to us. I believe in the prophetic. I believe in receiving a word from God. But God is able to speak to me as well. And in my quiet time, in my stillness with God, in my listening to God, that's what God told me, And, I've heard, they're losing sleep over this and this, and I'm like, man, I'm sleeping great. Because that's not what it's about. It's not about just doing for God. Yes, I can do all kinds of things. I pick up the slack a lot of times, because that's what I do. I love to do church stuff. I love to do all that. But, we've got to be able to prioritize our families, Paul told Timothy in 1 Timothy 3, he said that a leader must manage his own household well. Not perfectly, but with integrity, with presence, and with love. We flip the script, we'll cancel date night with our spouse, but we'll never cancel a meeting. We'll spend hours prepping for a sermon, but give 5 distracted minutes to our kids. I've been there. And I still do that every once in a while. And I've stood on the platform delivering fire while my house is quietly burning around me. I've done those things. And, I was everybody else's pastor except for my own kids. Even now I kind of struggle with that because, my kid, if I'm not, it's like, do I have the pastor's hat on now, or do I have the dad hat on now? Are you listening to what I'm saying? Are you, which side of it is sometimes, But here's the truth, God didn't call you to build a ministry that leaves your family in wreckage. He called you to lead them first. And leadership begins at the table. It begins at the pulpit, not at the conference stage, not on live stream. It is at the table, or it's on your couch or in your easy chair in your living room when you're having church. Tonight we have church at 5:00 at my house, and hopefully everybody's there tonight. I don't know if they will be because we've had some, conflict that's been taking place. And I'll be honest with you, it's tough sometimes when you have all these family members living at my house, but I wouldn't trade it for a thing, I mean, even with my daughter's boyfriend and my son-in-law just got baptized last week, and even the conversations that are coming out of the things that we're talking about on Monday nights, the emotionally healthy spirituality, and listening to them, it's amazing what God is doing. It's amazing how those things are happening and transpiring. But, so when I stepped away from the full-time church leadership, something happened in my home, The kids had already started coming back to church. My grandkids started asking questions, we started eating together, there's just different things that we're forced to do now. And it's not really forced, but it's just we are living together, we pray together, and we learn together, and we're opening up avenue of dialogue with each other. And it's not me just telling them, oh, you got to do this, got to do that. No, it's me. It's us. It's me and Tracy listening to them, and us talking to them, and meeting them where they're at. Our houses, our homes, they're the proving ground for our leadership. If you're in leadership, when's the last time you looked your spouse in the eye and asked how they were really doing? Or when's the last time you let your kids interrupt your important work just to tell you a story? Your leadership starts at home. Leadership starts in those places, But what if the greatest sermon that you ever preached was your marriage? What if your most powerful altar call is tucking your kids in at night and reminding them that they're loved? What is the revival you're praying for in your church? Maybe it starts around your own table. One of the things that I've been learning about is leading out of your marriage. And what does that mean? That means, you have an intimate relationship with your wife, and with your kids, where you are talking and sharing. And that relationship should be parallel with your relationship with Jesus, has that intimacy and that same thing, where you're spending time with Jesus and you're spending time with your wife. You are in that flow with them, and you're leading your family through your marriage. I've been married for I think 34, 35 years almost, and it's amazing, what God is doing in our marriage right now in this season. Me and my wife are closer than what we've ever been before. We're able to talk, we're able to share, we're able to bring up the hard questions and not have conflict about it, because that's just where we're at and where we're headed, I say everything that I've said on this podcast today. It is not to bash anybody. It's not to make anybody mad. It's not to make anybody feel bad. No, it's to really just show you what my point of view is and how I look at things. It's really been a struggle, because my kids are still going to church. My parents are still going to that same church. There's been a lot of questions to my mom especially, and my dad not as much. I don't know why, but it's like people have to explain what happened, and I'm like, they don't need to explain what happened to you. It's almost like it's an admission to guilt when you're trying to explain why this happened or why something happened. And like I said earlier, come and talk to me about it if there's any questions in your mind, why I did what I did or whatever. But I'm at a good place in my life. I'm in probably the best place that I've been in a long time. I'm closer to God. I'm spending more time with God than I have in a long time. I'm getting ready to go to Vietnam with my friend Winston Bowie, and we're gonna see some great miracles and great things happen. And then I come back and I'm gonna spend some time with my brother, but then I'm going to Oklahoma and I'm visiting friends and family there, and hopefully I get to speak and minister in different places there. But even if I don't, it's worth it because of just the people that have reached out to me from Oklahoma that just want to talk to me about my journey, and they want to tell me their journey. And it's like, whoa, well, that's kind of cool, because we all have a testimony. We all have something to share. We all have things in our lives that may not be pleasing to everybody else around us, but maybe they're pleasing to God. And it's where God is taking us and where God is leading us. We don't have to look at any of the expectations of what other people try to place on us. The only expectation we should have is the one that God has given us, that God has placed on us, to love him, to serve him, love people, love God. And that's where we're at, and that's where I'm at. And so I hope this encouraged you today, and I hope that you continue to listen. This has been a tough one for me, and so just remember, it's always family before the platform. Whatever platform you're on, whether you're an influencer, whether you're a leader, whether you're in business, it doesn't matter what it is. Remember, your family is first. Your house is your first leadership role. Your marriage is your first leadership role. And that's where you lead out of. You lead out of your marriage. And remember, always, always, don't try to do for God, but always try to be with God. I'm going to leave you with that. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, let everybody know about it. And I will talk to you in episode 3. You guys have a great day.